Hi, this is Dr. Tony Alvarado. I want to welcome you to Harmonize Your Life, Conversations on Self-Care for Women of Color podcast. I want to also, I'm excited to also welcome you to season 11 of these podcast conversations. Yes, you heard me right. This is season 11 of the Harmonize Your Life, Conversations on Self-Care for Women of Color podcast with your host, Dr. Tony G. Alvarado. I'm so glad to have you with us today as we prepare to launch another season of inspirational conversations around self-care, health, wellness, fitness, mental health, financial health, grief, and all the things that we need to hold and walk a harmonious life. And so I'm glad to have you with us. I'm glad about our podcast guests that have gone before us in previous seasons. As we prepare we're going into the third quarter of 2023. We're preparing now to end the year strong with some more of our guests who will be coming to us. And we build on the platform or the foundation of all the conversations that we have had heretofore. We have had so many men and women come on this podcast who have enlightened us, inspired us, given us information, literal life-saving, life-enhancing information so that we can live and be and do all the things that we were created to live and be and do. Today's conversation will not be any less than what you've already received. And I promise you, it will probably even be more as we continue to grow and as we continue to take these conversations to the next level. With each round, as we say in the church, we go higher and higher. And so I'll be right back with my next guest right after this. Well, this is a long-awaited conversation.
Yes, it is.
I have been trying to connect and get this woman of God, this professor, this profound woman on the podcast ever since I was introduced to her ministry, her writing, her teaching, her scholarship, ever since I was introduced to it through a mutual friend and sister and colleague in ministry, and soror. Yes, our sister and our friend, Dr. Nicole Hawkins, told me, she said, Pastor, who happens to be a member of my church, Pastor, you've got to get Dr. Chanequa Walker-Barnes on your podcast. And I am so grateful. And so from the moment she started talking to me about Dr. Barnes, I started following her on social media, reading her scholarship and her work. And I mean, you know, the Bible says deep calleth unto deep, and iron sharpens iron. And I certainly feel a kindred spirit with her. We have a passion for self-care, health, and wellness that I know brings us together in this space, but also in the work that we do, in the work that she does in the academy and the work that I do in the church. So we walking together, the academy and the church today are walking together, and I appreciate that. Dr. Chanequa Walker-Barnes is a prominent scholar, theologian, and author known for her thought-provoking work on racial justice and spirituality. With a deep commitment to social change, she combines her expertise in clinical psychology and theology to tackle issues of systemic oppression, cultural trauma, and their impact on individuals and society. Through her research, writing and speaking, Dr. Chanequa strives to inspire others to transformative social action and holistic self-care. A professor at Columbia Theological Seminary, where I am a alumna of. She authored 3 books: Sacred Self-Care, I Bring the Voices of My People, and Too Heavy a Yoke. Her faith has been shaped by Methodist, Baptist, and evangelical social justice communities, as well as by Buddhism and Islam. In her 30 years in higher education, she has been a hurricane, University of Miami, and Gator in the University of Florida, and Tar Heel in the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and a Blue Devil in Duke University. Yet somehow she is still not a sports fan. Coming from all those major schools, she's still not a sports fan. But I want to thank you and I want to welcome you to our conversation on today.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here. So glad that we could finally get together at the same time.
At the same time.
Yeah.
At the same time. So, Dr. Chanequa Barnes, you know, I've purchased your book.
Thank you.
Daily Practices for Nurturing Our Whole Selves. And I'm so grateful to have you on the podcast with me, because I began this journey myself, personal journey down this road began about 24 years ago, right after the birth of my daughter, Ariel, and I'm 60 now. So I think I was about 37 then, 36 or 37 years old when I started this journey. And it has just morphed into not only something that I feel God wanted me to practice for me, but something that he wanted me to bring to my people. And so because of my passion and my personal commitment to self-care for my own life, and my passion to see that in others of us in our community embrace these practices, whatever those look like for us, right? Because they look different for all of us. So there's no one size fit all. I tell people all the time, self-care is from, it's not just getting your nails done and going to the spa, right?
Right.
Our pampering practices and things that we do. But self-care is everything from that to being honest with yourself or your spouse.
Yes.
And being in touch with who you are and your feelings, your emotions, and getting things in order where they need to be brought into alignment, or my word, harmony.
Yeah, I love that.
2 years ago, I began to disassociate with, or I decided to trump the word balance, and I opted more for the word harmony.
Yeah.
Because I believe that God has called us to live a harmonious life. And when I look at nature and I look at the way God has created us as a human body, everything works in harmony with one another if it's well.
Yeah.
Right. It works in harmony and in tandem. And so I got tired of running after balance. I got tired of, trying to balance my life. And when I realized that balance was an elusive animal, that it's not realistic, it's not something that we can sustain over a period of time, long period of time, I decided, you know what, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so I opted for harmony. Thus, harmonize your life.
Okay.
And I started the podcast in 2020, right at the top of the pandemic.
Wow.
And I had no idea when I began preparing for the podcast in 2019, toward the end of 2019, my children said to me, because I wrote the book, Harmonize Your Life, A Journey Towards Self-Care in 2018. I started the self-care retreats with women in 2017. And my children were like, Mom, you're so passionate about this. You should do a podcast. And we started planning for the podcast at the end of 2019. Excuse me. And then we said, okay, we'll launch it in March of 2020. And the week that we launched the podcast was the week that our governor here in Georgia shut us down,
Yeah.
right? And
Right.
said, we got to shelter in. And I was like, Lord. And then women started reaching out to me and saying, because I had done some workshops on health and wellness and our holistic living in churches and places where I had been ministering. And so I had women reaching out to me from all over the country saying, we need something. Are you doing anything? I'm depressed. I'm lonely. I feel isolated because of the pandemic and all of that. And so then I started the self-care network. And I meet with those women. I have women from all over the country and even other parts of the world that tap in, and I meet with them once a month. And I have some other programs that have developed out of that. And the podcast is a major part of that. So these conversations are so precious, and we get to share them with so many people because they're archived on my YouTube channel and Facebook page. And so I'm so glad that you're in the studio with us today to talk about your new book, Sacred Self-Care. This is your newest book, right?
Yes, it is. It's the
Okay, that's
newest
what I
one.
thought.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the newest. Sacred Self-Care, Daily Practices for Our Whole Self. So talk to us about your journey and what motivated you to write this book.
Yeah. It's amazing to hear the parallels in our journeys, right? So for me, this book is the culmination of a journey that's been over 20 years. Right.
Okay.
And for me, it was right at my 30th birthday when I was in the early part of my career as a tenure track clinical psychologist in a top ranked program, dealing with all kind of stressors and also dealing with health issues that I knew were stress related.
Wow.
Right. So and things that at 30 I shouldn't have been dealing with, right? I was too young to be having the problems that I was having. And I reached a point of crisis where I realized something had to change. And I realized what needed to change was me, right? And the way in which I was conditioned to take care of everybody and everything else but me. I was always putting myself on the back burner, and I was starting to crumble from it, both physically and emotionally.
And that's
And so,
interesting because here you
yeah,
are in a clinical psychologist role,
right,
and doing well,
right,
obviously,
right,
but yet you weren't taking care of you. You was taking care of everybody else,
yeah,
teaching
yeah,
them probably how to take care of them,
right,
but
right.
neglecting yourself.
Neglecting myself and looking good while doing it too, right? Like I played the role.
Don't
Nobody
we
can
do it?
tell. That's how we do, right? Dress it
Yeah,
up.
we look good doing it.
You look good.
That reminds me of Dr. Jean Porter King.
Yeah, yes.
So I had her on last season. We talked about her new book, Leading Well, and we talked about. She said that she was doing something one day, and one of her counterparts, one of her colleagues, said to her, "Black don't crack." And she said it was a white woman that said it to her. And so she was kind of taken back that someone else from another culture would look at her and say that. But she said, black don't crack from without. We crack from within.
From within. Right, right. And there's research showing that. There's research showing that while Black women may often look younger on the outside, if you actually take our body's age based on our health conditions, we are often older, right? Our bodies are aging faster than they should, even though we don't look like it.
Wow.
Yeah. So for me,
Wow.
isn't that? I mean, and so many of us will look good, but we're having problems with hypertension in our 20s and diabetes, type 2 diabetes down in our teen years very often, right? We're starting to have these issues. And so for me, I really reached this point where I said, something's got to change. I've spent my whole life taking care of everything, everybody else. It was how I excelled. It was how I managed to get the doctorate, put everything else on hold Don't worry about my needs. And I hit a point where I had to focus on me. And so I began this very intentional journey towards self-care. And within a month of doing it, in the beginning, it was, very simple things I was doing, right?
Mhm.
I experienced a transformation in my life. I recognize, that the health issues weren't gone, but they were improving.
Yeah.
Physically and mentally, emotionally, I felt much better. I felt more connected to people. I felt more connected to God.
Mm.
And one day, one of my practices was meditation. I started each day
I was
with
going to
an
ask you to talk about some of the simple things you were doing
yeah, the simple
right
things.
there.
I started each day with
Mhm.
prayer and meditation.
Mhm. Mhm.
And at the time, I did not have kids, so I spent an hour in prayer and meditation every morning, right? And I exercised, and I was doing all that, but that was the start of my day.
Mhm.
And about a month in, I'm sitting there one day after praying and meditating and reading scripture and thinking, wow, this is amazing, right? It's amazing what this has done for me. I wonder if this could work for other women. Like maybe I should teach this to other women.
Mhm.
And I heard a voice saying, yes, you should.
Yeah.
And I tell people, being a clinical psychologist, I had to be like, wait, what was that? what
Yeah.
was that? Where'd that come from?
Yeah. I
Right?
hear you. I hear
And I
you.
realized like, oh no, that was the Holy Spirit telling me I had to do something. So like you were saying, when you start to practice this, a lot of people think self-care is selfish and it makes you draw inward, but
Mhm.
it actually makes you want this for
Yes.
everyone else.
Yes. Yes. Yes, it does. Because when I really tapped in and like you said, simple things, a lot of times, and those of you that are listening, we want to start big. A lot of times we want to start with something major, big, like I tell people when they're starting to exercise, don't, people look, I post my videos, my exercise videos now. And I started doing it. One day I was doing it for a minute. And then when I stopped, people was asking me where I'm getting motivated by your videos. So then I said, okay, so I post my workouts now. Either I do a video or I post a picture or something. And I do that. I work out 6 days a week now. But when I started with one simple thing, a treadmill.
Yeah.
I asked my husband that year at 37. He said that year I was turning 37 that year. Ariel was born when I was 36 in September. The following May, I turned 37. And that started my journey. He
Wow.
said, what you want for your birthday? I said, a treadmill. Right. And I
Yeah.
started with that, just walking on the treadmill. And then I went to the why from there. And then so what you see today, me working out today, that wasn't what I was doing 25 years ago.
Exactly.
Right. I started
Yep.
small and worked my way up to what I'm doing now. So
Yes.
don't look at my videos today. Let it motivate you to do something, but don't try to do what I do. And one of my trainers says the best exercise for you is the one you will do.
You're right.
Period.
Right.
Whatever
It's
that
true.
is.
It's
Right.
true.
My sister swims. I don't swim. So it's great exercise, but it's not
It's
going
not,
to do me
yeah.
any good because that's not something I will do. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I love what you said. You started with just simply
Started
praying in the
small.
morning and
Yeah.
meditating.
Yes. And so, yeah. So for me, and I tell people that same thing because now my self-care, especially when, my self-care rule of life, it is very complex. But I tell people it took me 20 years to get to this point. It started small. And I would say, okay, I'm going to focus on these things. I wanted to focus on my morning prayer meditation. I wanted to focus on exercise. Those were the main two things, right? I'm going to try to do these things. And then over time, as I got better and more consistent at those, I said, okay, now I can add something,
Yeah.
right? Maybe if I was exercising 3 times a week, can I get it to 4? Let
Mhm.
me see if I can get it to 4, right? And so I begin, can I try a different type of exercise? Can
Mhm.
I add this into it, right?
Mhm.
And I often experimented with things, and some things, like you say, I would say,
Yeah.
that's not me.
That's right. That's right. That's
Right? They say that's something you're supposed to do or it's helpful, but it didn't fit me. But there were other things that I found, oh yeah, I'll do that, right? Like right now, I go to water aerobics a good 2 to 3 times a week. I love water
My
aerobics, right?
sister loves it. Yeah, yeah,
I love the water. It does well for me, right? Walking, I walk with a group in my neighborhood. We started
yeah.
doing this about a month ago. Those are the things I will do. And so to say,
Right.
oh, wait, maybe I'm not going to go and lift weights, but I will do this. So let me just try to do this
Do
with
what
more regularity, right? Let
Mhm.
me start with that. And so sometimes it's about challenging yourself, but really that began this journey and really was the beginning of my call to ministry,
Yeah.
right? It was that led me into women's ministry,
Mhm.
and saying, okay, all right, so I'm doing this. I'll go do this at the church, right? And that led to me hearing my call to ministry. And so my call to ministry is very much has always been about self-care. So this book is coming back to the thing that started this whole process
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
for me. Yeah.
It was the bush that was burning, but came back
Yes.
home.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
I love it. I love it. Our tracks are so similar. I mean, this is amazing. This is amazing.
Yep.
I'm so grateful that God has so many of us doing this work.
Yes.
And we may approach it from different angles or whatever, but I'm so grateful. This past Monday, I I guest lectured in for Dr. LaRonda Little over at Candler Theological Seminary. She does a class called Spirituality and Health. And I went in there, and the MDiv students and MTS students and public health students, and even one guy was in there from the School of Ethics. And so and talking about this whole holistic and way of approaching life. And I talked about my whole concept of harmonizing your life and what that looks like. And I just appreciate that God has so many of us operating in this space, and so
Yeah.
many Black women
Yes.
of us that are recognizing our gift to our community. This is part of our call and our ministry and our gift to our community, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's because for us, we see the urgency,
Yeah.
right? When we think about over, like the week before last, 2 Black women who were college presidents
Yeah.
died suddenly,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
One on stage at an event
Yeah.
passed out
Yeah.
and then died later that afternoon. And we see it in our families, we
Yeah.
see it in our congregations, right?
In
When
the
I
pulpit.
started this journey, it was like God opened up my eyes.
Yeah.
And suddenly, everywhere I went, I saw the suffering that was happening among Black women, among Black men, because we were not taking care of ourselves.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
suddenly I'm looking at the church pulpit and I'm seeing diabetes, hypertension, anxiety, depression. Like I was looking at people and I'm seeing it.
Yeah. Yeah. You are. I'm telling you. And it's sad. It's sad sometimes because sometimes, we perish for the lack of knowledge, but we also perish for the lack of action, right? And so we've got to, I tell people all the time, we got to do our part. We got to wake up to this, and we can't leave that up to someone else to do it for us. And what I mean by that is the majority culture is not coming to save us.
Right.
They're not coming for us.
No, they're not. They're
So
not.
we're going to have to save ourselves. We got to
Yes.
save our community. We got to get this word out. And that's why I tell people, I encourage those who watch this podcast to subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's free. It's just subscribe. But what happens is when you subscribe and you interact and you share it, these conversations come up in the Google search, because Google owns YouTube and Google are all connected. And
Right.
these kind of conversations with all the junk that's out there on the internet, we want to have this kind of information out there.
Yes.
So that our people can get this information and apply
Yes.
these things to their lives and see living examples of Black women that look like you and I,
Yeah.
who have applied these principles. And some of these things are literally saving our lives.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I affirm that so much. And it is true. I'm teaching a class right now on spiritual care for Black women. And we were reading the past couple of weeks, we've been reading about Black girls and their struggles. And the thing that the class keeps coming back to is why, right? Why is this happening for these girls? And part of what we talked about is this is the design, right? This is the design of the system that we are in. And so we can't be waiting for the government to fix it. They don't care, right? Ultimately, the system, there may be some people who care, and thank goodness we have Black women and getting into government to try to make a change. But I said the system is designed to harm our girls, which means if we want to address it in any way, it has to be us.
We have to answer.
Right? We have to do it. And I think it's very much the same for self-care. The health disparities we're seeing, that's a justice issue.
Yeah.
That's a justice issue. And we have to take it upon ourselves to address it the same way that we do with voting rights.
Yes.
Right? The same way that we do with criminal justice reform. We have to say, wait a minute, this system is killing us, and that is part of its strategy.
Yeah.
And so we have to resist by saying we're going to take better care of ourselves than the system wants us to.
Yeah. Yes. 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 So I started reading your book, and the idea of sacred self-care.
Yeah.
Unpack that for us. I read some stuff, but I want you to talk about it.
Yeah.
Why sacred?
Yeah. Self-care as a concept has been co-opted, and I'm sure you've seen it. Seeing as it seems like we started around the same time.
Yeah.
At that point, nobody was talking about self-care, right? No,
Right,
I mean, it wasn't a
it's
concept.
a buzzword now.
Right. But then it became a buzzword, and it became this very commercialized buzzword where people wanted you to buy something, or so suddenly people were talking about self-care. But I would hear, especially among Black women in ministry, I would hear things like, well, yeah, when things calm down, I'm going to take a vacation. When I get some time and I can really take some time off, I'm going to go do a day spa. Somebody gave me a gift certificate and I just haven't scheduled it yet. And I kept telling people, wait, okay, that's great. Like, those are great. I love those things, right? But that's not what I'm talking about, right? And that self-care is about taking care of the gift that God has given us. And so I start self-care with this idea that at our birth, every one of us was given a sacred gift, ourselves. God said, here's your body, right? Here is you. Here, the wonder that is you, right? And now you get to go experience the world through this body. Sacred self-care is about taking care of what God has created, right? And in doing that, out of a sense of gratitude for God, and then also doing it, especially for those of us who are called to ministry, so that we can sustain the gift that God has put into us, right? So that we can sustain the fire, right? Fan into flame, the gift that God has put into us. And so I talk about sacred self-care. I talk about self-care as this sacred and divine obligation that we have to God.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Ashley Eder, she is a psychologist, a clinical therapist, and coach. And I read some of her work around this, and she says that when we should think of self-care as when I begin to see that me, the gift that I am, the call that I have, is self-care helps me facilitate the purpose and the call of the gift that I am to the world, my contribution to the world.
Yeah.
So if I see, and I said this to my self-care group, one of the things that has grown out of my network is I work, last year I launched an intentional self-care program, and I intentionally kept it small because I wanted to work with just a small group of women for a year, on being intentional.
Mm.
The majority of the work has been helping these women eliminate the excuses.
Wow. Yes. Yes.
Good for whatever we want to call it, good excuses or reasons,
Mm-hmm.
but the constant word term phrase we hear with them. I don't have time. I can't. I can't. And so now to see some of these women, we started in February and now we're in October, and many of them now. So one of the women in the group, phenomenal accountant, businesswoman. She's an accountant, worked for a firm. She had not gone to her doctor's appointments in years. Did you hear what I said? Not.
Yes.
She said, when I asked her in the beginning, when we did our first sessions, and I'm asking her when was her last physical, you know, when did she have her last mammogram? These are things I'm asking in the intake, right?
Right.
She couldn't remember the last time she had a mammogram.
Wow.
Now, this is an accountant, Black
Yeah.
woman,
Yeah.
making it happen,
Mm-hmm.
making good money,
Yeah.
but not taking care of herself.
Yep.
So one of our first things with her was getting her back into her regular. I'm not talking about critical care stuff. I'm just talking about maintenance.
Just maintenance. Yeah.
Maintenance stuff that she would not schedule or do, right? And so now, I mean, she's gotten all of her maintenance appointments done for the year, and working. And I mean, that was a major accomplishment for her.
Yeah.
She recently, because she was working for a firm a few years ago, she was working for herself. And one of the things she did as a practice of self-care, she went to her boss and said, I need to change my arrangement and I need to become a contractor.
Wow.
And not a W-2 employee.
Yeah.
Because I need the time to take care of me, take off work when I need to do. And she said, now, you know, if I don't, she said she had to get over the fear of, if I don't work, you know, there's no check coming in. But then she's like, I got to manage my money differently, because for her, part of self-care, her mother died when she was coming into the program. And one of the things that she hadn't done was just stop to grieve.
To grieve. Yes.
And we worked on that and got her. Well, now she's exercising. I'm so proud of her. She's exercising now. She's changed her arrangement with her job. She's got all of her appointments done for the year. But it was working on that intentional process.
Yes.
And changing her mindset about self-care and putting herself first.
Yes.
Everybody else.
Yes. Yeah. And we experience such guilt about that, right? That putting ourselves first. That was the thing I had to learn with my self-care, because I had to realize I was in the habit of saying, let me take care of everything else, and then, right, I'll do these things. But I never had time, because the other things expanded and expanded and expanded, right? And so I never had time to take care of myself. When I shifted and said, this is the start of my day, which is why I started the day with prayer and reading scripture and meditating, because I said that goes first. That's the first part of my day. I'm going to do that first. And then I said, okay, let me add exercise after that. And part of it was, you know, the irony I was thinking today is often those of us who have flexibility over our schedules, we will be the least likely to use that for our own care. Right. And so my job, I didn't have to be there early in the morning, but I did. Right. Because somehow I thought, and then I stayed late. And then
because
I came home and worked home.
To do so, we feel like we're not doing a good job if we're not doing that. All that pressure to perform.
All of that pressure. Yeah, we have to change our whole mindset. And so part of that was for me. So I used affirmations. That was the other tool early. And my first one, the first affirmation, I am worthy of self-care. Every day. I said it to myself. I would wake up first 5 times. I am worthy of self-care. I am worthy of self-care. Because I knew the messages would creep in and say, you got to hurry up and get to work. You got too much to do today. You can't afford to stop. You can't afford to slow down. There's too much work for you to do. Hurry up and get to the office. If you don't get there early, somebody's going to notice. They might think you're not working hard enough. Right? All these messages were, and all of them were lies. But it was my own sense of insecurity that was feeding that, right? And I had to learn to fight that.
You're going deep. You're going
right,
deep.
right. I had
You're
to fight surgery that
now.
and say,
You're
right,
going deep. My own
It
insecurity.
was my own insecurity. Nobody was saying you have to be here at this time. Nobody was saying that to me. I did that to me. Nope, I didn't have a schedule. I imposed a schedule on myself.
Expectations.
Yes. Yes. And my expectations were that if I did not spend all my time pleasing other people, that somehow I would be at risk.
Yeah. Say that again.
So yeah,
just like that.
If I did not spend all my time pleasing other people, that my security would be at risk. And I had to learn, and I'll be honest, I still have to learn to fight that message, right? That is that inner message comes up often on a day-to-day basis, and it says, no, you should go check your email, right? You got to go check and see if there's anything you need to respond to first thing in the morning. And I have to say, hush, right?
Be quiet.
Right, be quiet. Be quiet. No, I'm going to sit down and meditate, right? Every day, because the world isn't designed to support my self-care. And so in some ways, I have to take it. I have to take it and claim it as my right and say, this is my divine right. This is my responsibility to God. This is my responsibility to me. I'm going to do this first. And everything else, I just have to trust, because that's the other part of it. I have to trust that God's grace is sufficient for the rest of this day. And so that the things that I have on my to-do list, that some of them might not get done because, yes, I took the time to go do my water aerobics class today. I took the time to get up and stretch and meditate this morning and pray, right? I took that time. So something's probably not going to get done. I took the time.
Right. So
I took it.
You took it. And that's self-care. That's that intentional self-care. I talk about in my book the difference between finding time and making time. And I tell people, when you find time, it's like a scavenger hunt. You're just looking around trying to see what's available. But making time says, no, this is what I'm going to do at this time and this time and this time. Now, that doesn't mean I can't be flexible and move things around. We get that. But when you leave yourself just open to whatever happens, and then I can fit myself in here whenever. No. Start with you. I told my group Tuesday night, start with yourself in mind.
Yeah.
And then once you've taken care of you, you can take care of everybody else. And I have found that I'm a better pastor. I'm a better wife. I'm a better mother. I'm a better whatever, preacher, teacher. I'm better. I'm a better friend, person, woman, when I have taken care of the people.
Yes, because when we pour into ourselves, we are energizing ourselves, right? And so then when you get ready to do things, you can be more present because you've attended to your own needs. So now, because I'm exercising, because I'm meditating, because I'm praying, I'm centered, right? I enter my day centered. And so I can be clear. I can be clear about what my priorities are. I can be clear about how I want to show up in the world. And so when I'm sitting in the meeting, I can be all present for that meeting because I've already taken, I'm not sluggish, right? I'm not sluggish. I'm emotionally centered until I'm clear mentally. And so I can say, oh, wait, I can really show up. So now guess what happens? It takes me less time to do the work I need to do because I'm not scattered mentally, right? I'm not sitting there. And sometimes part of self-care is the days where I am struggling. I say, I must be tired. I've been working on this for an hour. I've made no progress. Now I can keep sitting here and struggling, or I can stop, go rest for a while. And sometimes it's just, I need 20 minutes. I need 30 minutes to sit down. And then I come back and I'm like, oh, okay, I got this. Right. And so this is the trade-off. We often think that somehow we'll be shortchanged if we practice self-care. But what self-care does, it is the fuel we need, right? It is the fuel we need for our engine. And so it allows us to do the work we need to do better, clearer. It allows us to show up for a relationship. That was the surprise when I started practicing self-care. I was surprised at how much I started caring about other people.
Because self-care is a gift. It's a gift to you and everybody that you're called to care for.
Yes.
Right? It's other-centered in a lot of ways.
It is.
I can't, Jesus said, love your neighbor as you love yourself, right? Yeah. And we quote that, but really, when you think about it, I cannot love my neighbor if I don't love me.
Yep. And Jesus assumes it, right? At no point does Jesus say you need to love yourself. Jesus simply says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. He assumes you're supposed to love yourself. Right? He's not like, oh, I got to tell them to love themselves, right? He doesn't think he has to do that. You're supposed to love yourself. Love God as you love your neighbor. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. So if we work backwards, then it says, I can't love my neighbor if I don't love myself. And I can't love God if I don't love my neighbor.
Wow.
Self-care then becomes the foundation of our love of neighbor and love of God.
Oh.
And I think it's because we were created by God. So if we're not loving what God, it's
the foundation. No, you said it's the beginning of the love of God and the love of our neighbor.
Yes.
That's so good.
It's the foundation. So the more I practice loving myself, I found that my heart didn't close. I didn't start it wasn't like navel gazing, right? It wasn't like okay, what's my needs? No, it was like, oh, my needs are met. Open up. Oh, now what other needs are out there in the world? I have an abundance of care. Oh, wait, I'm getting filled. I have so much love.
Now and you have something to give for every good work, right? Because you've given yourself.
Yes, yes. And so then I started checking in. My colleagues at work, I would stop by their offices. Hey, how you doing? And they would look at me. They say, you need something? I was like, no, I just want to check in on you and see how you're doing. And they were stunned because none of us did that. We were all so busy all the time that we only approached each other if we needed something. And so for me to stop and say, I just wanted to check in with you. How was your day? Right. And then at home, I began connecting with my husband, being present with my husband, with my son. It meant I want quality time with him. I want to give him these 5-10 minutes. He's going to get my full attention. Right. I'm going to give him unadulterated attention for some time. Right. It meant that I started saying, I don't spend enough time with my family. My extended family, that feeds me. I need more time with them, right? It really helped me to open up my heart because I wasn't in survival mode. When we are not taking care of ourselves, our bodies move into survival mode.
Wow, wow.
And so we can't actually love. We might be doing a lot of things for other people, but we're not loving them because we're stressed. And once our stress response kicks in, all we're thinking about is how do I manage this crisis? And we see everybody as a crisis to be managed.
And then if we stay in that state too long, the injury that we do to our own mental health, our own physical health, our spiritual health, our financial health, our relational health,
all of it.
All those things that if we stay in that place too long, and some people live there, in that mode, in that crisis mode, in that stressful place. And so to be able to bring this type of teaching, I love what you're doing there at Columbia. I love the work that you're doing with this book. Talk to us about where we can get your book and also how you want people to engage the book. Like how do you want people to approach reading this book? Okay.
Yeah. So I wrote the book as a devotional. And one of the reasons that I did that was because I really wanted to do this the same way I would in therapy. If I was working with somebody in therapy, and it's the way you talk about, if I want people to change their behavior, you do it one step at a time.
Okay.
And so I knew so the book is divided into 7 weeks, and it is a 7-week journey of self-discovery as you're learning about yourself, learning to pay attention to yourself, learning to figure out what you need. And then you're moving towards developing your own self-care plan. As you talked about, it is not one size fits all. So part of it is we have to learn, how do I pay attention to figure out what is it that I actually need?
Yeah.
Right. And so each week is centered around a theme,
Mm-hmm.
and it's designed for you to be able to read it in the morning, or when and read it very quickly, because I know people are busy.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are these short reflections and then a practice that it invites you to think about for that day. And
so much like my book. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I cannot believe it.
Yeah.
Like when I was looking at your book and I was like, this is mine, Harmonize Your Life.
Yeah.
And I wrote this in 2017. I'm actually working on a sequel to it right now. But I was like, this is so amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. So I'm
talking about your process with your group. It sounds very similar, right? It's about you meet people where they are.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you say, and now we're going to incrementally move you towards this goal, right? Yeah. And so that's what the book does. And at the end, it invites you to put together your own self-care rule of life, which is actually what I use and have used now for a good 7 years to structure my self-care and to be very to be accountable to my self-care, right? To name, this is what I need to do, and to have a way of thinking about that and keeping myself accountable. And so you can get the book really wherever books are sold: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Bookshop. You can order it from Walmart and Target as well. So yeah, go out and get the book. There are some goodies in the book and on my website. So it gives you access to the template for the self-care rule of life, some worksheets for thinking about your self-care to help really jumpstart you on developing your own plan.
Oh, wow. This is such a blessing. You're a blessing. And I can't wait. Now we're going to have to get together and go to lunch so that I can get signed. I ordered mine at Amazon, but I like to have the author sign my book.
Yeah.
I'll bring you a copy of mine. And I believe there's more work we're called to do together too. We'll talk.
You know what? I think so too. I think so too.
But this is good. This is good. I'll have to bring you to my retreat. I'm thinking about. I was like, oh, she would be great at the self-care retreat. So we'll talk about that too.
Okay.
And some other things that I'm thinking about. But yeah, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for these connections. I'm grateful for how God is moving in our lives and in this whole space of self-care, health, and wellness, particularly. And I'm going to tell you, Dr. Chanequa, when I started the podcast, I wrestled with whether or not my focus would be just women of color. I went back and forth with the title because I was like, well, I don't want to exclude other women, but I'm so clear that this is who God has called me to minister to. And not that other women aren't important or that they can't take part in the work I'm doing. But what I mean by this is, I know we're number one in all diseases.
All of them.
And so I'm like, God, I want something for our people that our women can come. And I wanted to curate a space where we can come and talk about these issues, be real about these issues, and help one another.
Yeah.
And help one another. And so I'm grateful that I'm not on this journey by myself, that that there are others on this journey, and that we're on this road together and we're singing the same song. And and God has given you a piece and me a piece and Jean a
Mhm.
piece, and you know what I'm saying? And we can put it
Yes.
all together and really,
Yep.
really make a difference in the lives of women and men and children, our whole community.
Yeah. It helps everyone. And I think women of color are important because we are so crucial in many of the places we serve, whether it's our families, our churches, our communities, our jobs. So I really firmly believe that when women of color, especially Black women in particular, when our life circumstances improve, because we care for so many around us, everybody gets lifted with us,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? And so I applaud the work that you're doing. I think it's not coincidental that
Mm-mm.
so many of us are turning in this direction, and there's so much resonance across the ways we are thinking about and approaching this. And I think it is because we have recognized this is what our world needs.
Yeah, this is. Well, I want to let people know where they can find you. If you're listening to this podcast, for those of you that are listening, if you're on YouTube, you're watching us. If you're on Anchor or Spotify, I want you to know where you can find this podcast. You can find us on Anchor. You can find us on Apple, Google, and Spotify. You can go to my YouTube channel at Dr. Tony G. Alvarado, and all of our episodes are archived there on my YouTube channel. So I do want you to know where you can find this podcast. I also want you to know, women, you can join the Harmonize Your Life Women's Self-Care Network. You can do so by going to my website at drtonyalvarado.com. And when you go there, there is a link to the self-care network. You join there and we'll be in touch with you. We get you involved in our monthly tea time with Dr. Tony, which is a private meeting on Zoom that I have with the women in the network. You get access to some of the other work that we're doing, and you get more information about what we're doing. And you are supporting, when you join the network, you are supporting this podcast. You're supporting the work that we are doing because we have to produce it. And so for you to be a part of that, partnering with us by joining the network helps you to partner with us in getting these kind of conversations out there. I also want those of you that are listening to know that we will begin our next cohort of the Intentional Self-Care Program. That is coming up. Be listening out. The registration for that will be live next month, in the month of November. We're going to start taking applications for 2024 as we close out the year 2023. It is a small group of women that we take through that program because we want to make sure that we can just really intentionally focus on and with you on that. I also want you to know where you can find our guest today, Dr. Chanequa Walker-Barnes, my sister, my friend, my soror, my colleague in ministry and in this self-care space and work. Her book is what we are highlighting today. Her book, Sacred Self-Care, Daily Practices for Nurturing Our Whole Selves. That's the book that her most recent book that she authored. And you can go to her website at drchanequa.com, learn more about her and the work that she's doing. Her book, you heard her say, you can get on Amazon, any place where books are sold. Follow her on Facebook. Follow her on Instagram. Follow her on Twitter. All of her handles are Dr. Chanequa on IG, Dr. Chanequa on Twitter, and she is Chanequa Walker-Barnes on Facebook. I just want you to know where you can find her and how you can tap into the work that she is doing in this space. Dr. Chanequa, I'm going to ask you to give a final word of encouragement or motivation to the women and men that are listening to us on today as we close out our conversation.
I will. In fact, I will end us with a benediction from the book. You have been reminded that you were created in the image of the God who feels deeply and who has created humanity with the capacity for deep emotion. May God bless you with the wisdom to join your emotion with your reason, with compassion for yourself as you go through the ups and downs of life, and with joy, love, peace, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Wow. Thank you for that blessing.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the blessing and the gift that you are to us, to our community. And thank you for taking care of that gift, for caring enough about us to care about you. Yeah. Thank you so, so much. All right, you all, I told you, every round goes higher and higher on this podcast. Dr. Chanequa Barnes is the first guest for season 11 of the Harmonize Your Life Conversations on Self-Care for Women of Color podcast with your host, Dr. Tony G. Alvarado. Stay with us for the rest of this season. We got another guest coming on this month, the month of October. She is kicking us off with a wonderful, wonderful admonition and benediction over our lives. And we thank her, and we look forward to seeing you again on the Harmonize Your Life Conversations on Self-Care for Women of Color podcast. See you soon.